Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Roberts. Welcome to the October 15th edition of Effective, Efficient, Affordable, and above all, accountable to you. I would like to remind you this evening, I would like to warn you this evening that there are strange people prowling the streets of Winstead, strange men, going from house to house, walking up your driveway, looking through your windows. They call themselves Winchester Democrats, but they want your money, ladies and gentlemen. Do you know where your kids are? Lock your doors this evening. Give your child an extra hug. I would like to cover two broad topics this evening. Firstly, a quick recap of the financial situation, the financial debacle, because that's what it is. And secondly, and we'll spend some more time on this, I would like to go through what we need to hear from our Board of Education candidates. There is a Board of Education debate later this week, Thursday, October 17th, 7 p.m., the Gilbert School. But first, a quick reminder where things stand financially. Once again, the current problem that we face. In a nutshell, Candy's budget does not provide enough money to pay both the current and the old bills. The budget that Candy crafted, the budget of which she was the architect, the chief salesperson, the chief celebrator when it passed, it doesn't provide enough cash to pay the bills. And where does that leave us? Well, the Registered Citizen put it best, October 8th of this year. The town's children and parents remain in limbo, wondering if the schools will close in December. That is the current problem that Winchester faces. How did we get here? How did we end up in limbo, wondering whether our schools would close? Well, fortunately, the Democrats, Candy as chief architect, but George and Michael as her fellow travelers, have left us a pretty clear roadmap. They wrote, indeed all of the Democrats on the Board of Selectmen wrote an open letter to us the voters, on May 20th of 2013. In that open letter, they made three rather extraordinary statements. The first, the budget opponents claim that the town is not paying its bills. This is not accurate, period. Candy is saying that we have no unpaid bills. This is despite the fact that the prior June, the end of the prior year, the Board of Education alone had $1.2 million in unpaid bills. This is despite the fact that as recently as Christmas 2012, the Board of Education had $3.2 million in unpaid bills. And this is despite the fact that just weeks later, at the end of the year, June 2013, the town would have almost $2.5 million in unpaid bills, 1.7 of those for the Board of Education. But Candy and George and Michael, our candidates for the Board of Selectmen, chose to say that this is not accurate, period. Secondly, and rather confusingly, they chose to say that the deficit does not need to be paid down in 1 year. So having established that there is no deficit, that there are no unpaid bills, they went on to say that we can ignore those non-existent unpaid bills. And then as the pièce de résistance, they talked about a mill that would go into the fund balance, as well as addressing unpaid bills which did not apparently exist. Candy said quite simply, we can run the town, we can function as a community, despite having millions and millions and millions of dollars in unpaid bills and despite having no fund balance. These were the essential planks of Candy's budget, the result of which is our current state of limbo and uncertainty as to whether our schools will close in a matter of weeks. So I guess the question becomes, these three statements that Candy made, Candy and George and Mike, the three Democratic incumbent candidates for our Board of Selectmen, were they outright lies or merely bad judgment calls? Well, again, let's just review the timeline here, ladies and gentlemen. May 3rd, you received a mailer from the Board of Education. It referred to millions of dollars in unpaid bills. That same day, the town manager responded to the superintendent of schools, calling that claim a falsehood and an erroneous statement. The town manager basically called the superintendent of schools a liar because the superintendent of schools was prepared to put a list on the table of millions of dollars in unpaid bills. It's difficult to say that Candy's statements were merely bad judgment calls when she had been told in writing repeatedly that there were millions of dollars in unpaid bills and that her budget did not address them. Now, I think we can all say that Candy should not be expected to believe people like me. And I think we can all say that Candy should not be expected to believe people like the Republican selectmen. Although one must question whether people should really believe that Candy should not be expected to believe her own superintendent of schools. But we don't need to enter into these obscure philosophical discussions, ladies and gentlemen, because the town manager, Candy's chief surrogate, makes it perfectly clear. In the Register Citizen, October 5th, 2013, he stated, "Martin said he hasn't deviated from the plan he and the Board of Education initially put in place earlier this year. He understands that the closing of the schools is the likely effect of a shortage of funds." Candy Perez and her chief surrogate, the town manager, understood that her budget didn't deal with the unpaid bills. Candy Perez and her chief surrogate, the town manager, understood that her budget would require the schools to close. There was a plan. It was put in place at the beginning of the year. They have not deviated from it. They still support it. The inescapable conclusion is that Candy Perez planned to close the schools. And her fellow Democrat candidates, George, Michael, Virginia, and Loretta, all supported and continue to support her plan to close the schools. We cannot be any clearer than that, ladies and gentlemen. Lies or bad judgment calls? I call them lies. So where do we go from here? What is the solution? What is Candy's solution to not having enough money? Well, Candy's solution is basically to stay the course. More of the same. Let's just keep going. The grant anticipation note. The grant anticipation note, Candy's chief solution, Candy's only solution, is basically the budget pas deux. The grant anticipation note simply takes grant revenues that we are due to receive in April and brings them forward to December. The grant anticipation note simply takes the going out of business sale that is Winstead and moves it from Christmas to next May. Now, there are those who might say that if we're going to run out of money, if we're going to go out of business, Christmas isn't the time to do it. There are presents to be wrapped, joy to be had, roads to be plowed. Much better to do it in the early summer. But if you have kids in school, ladies and gentlemen, you understand that the end of the school year is a critical time. If you have seniors taking tests, if you have seniors wanting to graduate, seniors going to prom, seniors looking to move on with their life, having schools closed in May and June is the worst of all possible outcomes. And yet this is Candy's solution. Faced with the problem of not enough money, Candy's solution is to continue with not enough money and to simply push everything out from Christmas to April or May or June. Excuse me. There is a solution, ladies and gentlemen, to not enough money, which is we need more money. We need to raise a supplemental tax. We need to raise enough of a supplemental tax to actually fix the problem, to pay the bills and operate the town. But just raising more money is not the whole solution. Because we got into this position by spending more money than we actually bring in. We got into this position by having lousy budgetary discipline, by overspending, by hiding expenses. If we do nothing to change the way we do business, it doesn't matter how big a supplemental tax you raise today, we will end up in the same situation again. The only viable solution, the real solution to the pickle that we face, to Candy's bad budget, is not only to raise money, to raise a supplemental tax, but to radically change the way we do business here in town, to ensure that our costs become in line so that we don't continue to spend more than we bring in. Now let's be clear. The Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen have both been pretty clear that they have no appetite for changing the way we do business. That's despite the fact they have nothing really to lose. They have no personal stake in the game. It's just their political ambitions that lie on the block. But we should also be clear that the employees of our town, our teachers, the folks who work in Town Hall, the folks who work at DPW, etc., they're not particularly keen on radical changes in government either. And why should they be, ladies and gentlemen? Why should we expect a family man, a family woman, to want to receive less money, to want to lose their family benefits? Why should we expect them to participate in a plan that will undoubtedly make it more difficult for them to clothe and feed their families? But the simple reality, ladies and gentlemen, is whatever makes sense for the family, whatever makes sense for the individual, if we view that from the perspective of the community, from 30,000 feet, what makes sense for the individual is a town killer. We can't afford to do business the way we have been doing business. It's that simple. We need not only to raise a supplemental tax to raise more money, but we need to change the way we spend that money. We need to ensure that we get the services that we need at a price that we can afford. Because the alternative, quite frankly, if we don't do this, ladies and gentlemen, the alternative is a third party will do it for us, a bankruptcy judge or the state. Alternative number one, Candy solution, doesn't work, doesn't bring any more money, simply moves the going out of business sale. Alternative number two is painful, and it's perfectly clear that no one wants to do it, but it is the only viable solution. Alternative number three will be more painful. There will be more lawyers involved. There will be more costs involved. There will be a third party, a bankruptcy judge, who doesn't give a tinker's cuss for the personalities involved here in Winsted, for the individuals involved here in Winsted. Bankruptcy is not a good alternative. But if we're not willing to fix this problem ourselves, it may be the only alternative. So where do we go from here? Switching gears, Thursday, October 17th, is the Board of Education debate. You will hear from three incumbent candidates, Royer, Dutton, and Shaughnessy, and a number of new candidates for Board of Education here in town. I am not going to tell you who I think you should vote for, but I am going to tell you what I think we need to hear from these candidates. What are the real issues that they need to be talking about? And which direction do I believe they need to be leaning in? There's a short list of key issues that the candidates need to face. The first issue, and perhaps the most important issue, is that the candidates need to understand, and the Board of Education needs to understand, that our schools are not somehow separate from our town. They are a part of our town. It is not acceptable for the Board of Education to pursue its own individual agenda, to say that somehow teaching is different, the kids are different, the schools are different. We don't need to worry about the people's budget. We don't need to worry about what the people want us to do or would prefer that we do not do. We don't need a Board of Education that simply says the town can go to hell because we're going to do what we're going to do. We need a Board of Education, and we need candidates who are willing to say that we are part of the community, we are simply a department of town, if you will, and that we need to live within the hopes and aspirations and needs of the community. Now, when I say that we need to work within the community, I'm not suggesting that we simply need to join in the cover-ups that have been engineered by our civic leaders against the community. As an example, in September, the Board of Education was informed that the schools would be out of money and would need to close in December. This is a perfect opportunity for the Board of Education to step up the plate and begin to take action. A motion was placed on the table to go to the state and encourage the state to in turn encourage the town to live up to its budgetary obligations. The Board of Education, a majority of the Board of Education, voted not to go to the state. Each of the incumbent candidates, Royer, Dutton, Shaughnessy, voted not to go to the state. They voted not, in their words, to embarrass the town manager, and the mayor, and presumably the future mayor, Candy Perez. They said it is more important that we join with our civic leaders, our democratically controlled Board of Selectmen, in covering up what is going on from the people of this town than to do the right thing for the people of this town. We need a Board of Education and Board of Education candidates who will act for the community, with the community, and be a part of the community. Period. The end. We need a Board of Education and Board of Education candidates and a school system that understands that it must rebuild the bonds of trust and credibility with the townspeople. All too often I am asked at the Board of Education, why will the people not vote us more money? And I respond, because the people don't believe that you will spend that money wisely. The people don't believe that you need that money. And the other members of the Board of Education look at me like I have three heads. Why don't they believe, they say? Well, because everything you say is spin, or incomplete, or wrong, or a downright fabrication. The people do not believe the Board of Education. Now, we can't run a government if you, the townspeople, don't believe what we, the government, are telling you. It's that simple. The Board of Education needs to work on regaining your trust and regaining its credibility. It needs to be upfront and open about everything. It needs to provide you with complete, accurate, timely information about everything. About money, finances, where it spends its money, how much money is it bringing in, about academic results, about graduation rates, disciplinary outcomes, staff turnover. It needs to be upfront with you about everything. Because only by doing that can the board hope to regain your trust and hope to regain its own credibility. The board needs to understand that it is part of the community, and the board needs to understand that it currently has zero credibility and that its number one task is to rebuild that credibility. These are not the only things that the board needs to do, and not the only things that your candidates for the Board of Education need to do. There needs to be a recommitment to teaching, a recommitment to education. We are the Board of Education. We are not the board of hoarding money, or the board of supporting the Board of Selectmen, or the board of anything else. We're the Board of Education. We need to commit to teaching. Our board does not talk about academic results. We hear a lot about initiatives advanced by various people, be it the Board of Selectmen, be it folks like me, be it folks on the outside, as to why those initiatives won't work, why they will negatively impact academic results. But we never hear anything about academic results. The Gilbert School produced an exhaustive analysis of their academic results, and yet we have not done the same. We don't talk about academic results, except insofar as to say that we are an alliance district, which we seem to believe is a badge of honor. Let's be clear, ladies and gentlemen, being an alliance district is a recognition that we are among the 30 worst educational districts in the state. The only thing that this board talks about is its failure, the fact that it is a failure. It is an alliance district. We need to copy the example of Gilbert. In the last year, Gilbert has undergone new leadership. That leadership has espoused wholeheartedly a recommitment to educational academic excellence. They've re-engineered everything they do. After just 1 year, the results have been extraordinary. Let me read from the Gilbert Gazette. It came out this week. Last year, our students had an incredible year. Our CMT, CAPT, and AP scores rose dramatically. Our advanced placement program had the most significant gains in the entire state. Sophomores had the second and seventh highest gains on the CAPT math and science tests, respectively. 7th and 8th grade students made powerful CMT gains in both reading and writing. Combine this great news with the addition of 13 new courses in grades 9 to 12. A revamped reading, writing, science, and math focus in grades 7th to 8th. The infusion of robotics and STEM as extracurriculum programs. Gilbert is basically saying we need to do things differently. Gilbert is basically saying that we have been in the past a thoroughly mediocre educational establishment, and that we need to reestablish our claim to be a good school. This comes from leadership, ladies and gentlemen. It comes from the top. The principal of Gilbert has just been named the best new principal in the state of Connecticut. I don't think our mayor has been named the best mayor in the state of Connecticut. I don't think our superintendent on the public side has been named the best superintendent in the state of Connecticut. But the Gilbert principal has been named the best new principal. New leadership, a new commitment to excellence achieves results. The last thing that we need for the school board to recognize is that their teaching operations need to live within the budget that you vote. All too often in the past, the school board has simply ignored your budget and overspent. The best that can be said for this current school board for the last 2 years is that we have maintained our budget discipline. We have not overspent our budget. But that's about all that we can say for the current board. But just as we need to commit to academic excellence, we need to commit to budgetary discipline. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we need to commit to working with Gilbert and not against Gilbert. We need to understand that there are no other viable choices. We are not going to be building a new school. We're broke. The three incumbents, Royer, Shaughnessy, Dutton, along with a majority of the current board, would like to see the Gilbert contract go away. They would prefer to send your children to Torrington. It is not for me to tell you whether you should or should not send your kids to Torrington. But I think a timely reminder that the Torrington schools have been in the press recently for reasons other than academic excellence. A timely reminder that Torrington has gangs, that Torrington students do somehow find themselves victims of assault at the hands of their fellow students, their fellow jocks. It's up to you, ladies and gentlemen, to decide whether you want to send your kids to Torrington. But if you do not, if you wish to hang with the Gilbert School rather than against it, if you wish to avoid the Torrington option, you should avoid the incumbent candidates for the Board of Education, Royer, Dutton, Shaughnessy. You should ask where your candidates stand on these topics. You should listen to what they say, and then you should decide, do you believe them? Because let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, politicians of all stripes are pretty good at saying one thing and doing another. Ask where they stand, ladies and gentlemen, and then figure out, do you trust them? Do you believe them? I fibbed. There is one last thing that we need to hear from our candidates. We need to hear from each and every candidate. We need to hear where each and every candidate stands on the candidacy of Virginia Schultz Charette. Virginia is a candidate for the Board of Selectmen. She is a potential mayor of this town. The actions of Virginia Schultz Charette were described in a Registered Citizen article dated October 5th, 2004. She was quoted as follows: "I guess what I have to do is to get a rifle and go over to Pearson's school and start shooting and shoot some people to get some attention. I guess what I have to do is to get a rifle and go over to Pearson's school and start shooting and shoot some people to get some attention." I want to know, I believe you should want to know, where every candidate for the Board of Education stands on Virginia Schultz Charette. I would like to know what those candidates, what this board will say to the parents of Newtown, Connecticut, a community that was kind enough to donate school materials to Winstead in the wake of their own community tragedy. I would like to understand what the candidates for the Board of Education think about what has been described as a want-to-be school shooter representing our town. I want to hear that from every candidate, but I especially want to hear it from the candidates endorsed by the Democratic Town Committee. I want to hear why they were comfortable accepting that endorsement when that Democratic Town Committee also endorsed Virginia Schultz Charette. I want to hear why they are comfortable sharing a slate with Virginia Schultz Charette. I want to hear what they're going to tell the parents about Virginia Schultz Charette. In her words, I guess what I have to do is to get a rifle and to go over to Pearson School and start shooting, and to shoot some people to get some attention. Because that has been Virginia Schultz-Surrett's major contribution to our community's governance thus far. We have major issues, ladies and gentlemen. Candy Perez designed a budget that doesn't work, that doesn't generate enough revenue to pay our bills. Candy Perez told us that we didn't need to pay our bills, that we didn't need a fund balance. Candy Perez was wrong, and we now find ourselves in a situation where our schools are scheduled to close. Candy Perez has authored a solution, except it's a non-solution. Candy Perez has simply said that the solution to not having any money is, you got it, ladies and gentlemen, to not have any money. Candy Perez simply wants to change the date of the going out of business sale. Candy Perez resists the only real solution: raising a tax, changing our costs, changing the way we do business. And it's not just Candy Perez. Her fellow travelers, George Clausen, Mike Renzullo, Loretta Tremblay, Virginia Schultz-Surrett, they are resisting doing the one thing that we need them as leaders to do. The alternative to their doing the right thing, ladies and gentlemen, the alternative to their presenting us with a real solution is bankruptcy. And trust me, bankruptcy is the last place we want to be. So our candidates for the Board of Education need to get real. Assuming we can fix our problems, and I hope we can, they need to build on that fixing of our problems. They need to commit to returning the Board of Education to being a part of our community and not somehow separate from it. They need to commit to rebuilding their own credibility and regaining our trust. They need to commit to educational excellence and not educational bickering. They need to commit to budgetary discipline, to spending our money wisely and not just spending our money. And they need to commit to working with Gilbert rather than working against Gilbert and for the Torrington School District. Finally, they need to justify to you why we, the town of Winchester, should face the embarrassment of a candidacy of a want-to-be school shooter. Someone needs to explain to us why Candy Perez is the leader of the Democratic ticket and why the Democratic Town Committee felt that this is what was going to put Winsted on the map. A financial crisis, a non-solution, and the candidacy of Virginia Schultz-Surrett. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to me. We have several weeks more to go. Please attend the Board of Education debate if you can, or watch it on TV. And we will be back next week to review latest developments and review the Board of Selectmen debate and the candidates for that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck, as they say.